I'm here at this healthcare clinic to uplift the work that is happening in Minnesota as an example of what true leadership looks like.
The lawyers for Donald Trump are in a federal court in Florida today trying to get his classified documents case tossed out.
It has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington. Welcome to America Decides, and welcome to a presidential campaign unlike any other. The campaign trail versus the courtroom dynamic that has really come to define this race was on full display today. President Biden is in Michigan meeting with voters, and Vice President Kamala Harris made a first-of-its-kind visit to a Minnesota reproductive health clinic that performs abortion services. Here's some of what she had to say.
How dare these elected leaders believe they are in a better position to tell women what they need, to tell women what is in their best interest. We have to be a nation that trusts women.
But former President Trump isn't on the campaign trail today. Instead, this morning, he arrived in court for one of his many lingering legal cases. We'll go to Florida in a moment, but first we begin with Aaron Navarro, who is following the president in Michigan. Aaron, good to see you there in Michigan. Obviously, a huge, critical battleground state for both the current and former president. And recent polling shows that Biden has really struggled with Arab American voters in the state, especially over his response to the Israel-Hamas war. I know you've done a lot of reporting on this through the primary and now. What's he hoping to accomplish with this trip now that he is in general election mode?
Hi, Caitlin. Good to be with you. I'm here in the headquarters of the Saginaw Democratic Party, Saginaw County. This is a county that's essentially going to be a bellwether for the state. You have a core base of Democratic voters here in the city of Saginaw, surrounded by suburban, more moderate Republican voters. And by President Biden coming here, visiting the east side of Saginaw today, local leaders told me it's just a sign that he is acknowledging that he needs to tap into the Black community. He needs to show up and really kind of re-energize them ahead of what's, a rematch between Trump and Biden, where voters kind of know where they stand on their opinions of both of these men. But I'm being told that, the president coming here, listening to the voters, what they have to tell him is going to be really key as they kind of build up support in the Democratic base.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see where he is deciding to go, and that tells us a lot about where they think the campaign is heading. I mean, he was also in Wisconsin yesterday, so he's been spending some time in the Midwest, of course, another big battleground state. How important is Wisconsin to his reelection bid?
It's crucial. It's part of that blue wall that he needs. And I was speaking with the Democratic Party chair of Wisconsin yesterday, and I asked him, what's different this cycle in this rematch between Trump and Biden compared to in 2020? And he brought up the Dobbs decision. He thinks that ever since that happened in 2022, that it's galvanized Democrats, not just in urban or suburban areas, but even those in the rural areas. And we're going to see, especially in Wisconsin, they have 44 field offices, the Biden campaign and the state Democratic Party there, signaling they're not just looking to compete in the suburban areas that they need, but in the rural areas where they need to kind of tampen down any Republican lead and juice up the numbers so that they can win in the state. But he told me it's a 50-50 state in Wisconsin, and they're expecting it to be 50.3% at most for Biden this November. So they're expecting it to be close.
The campaign is really blanketing the Midwest this week because you have Kamala Harris, the vice president, of course, in Minnesota today. They're really leaning into abortion access as a key focal point of this campaign. She was the first sitting vice president to visit an abortion provider. What more can you tell us about this trip? I mean, it seems pretty consequential and tells us a lot about where they think this campaign is heading.
Kind of the first of its kind, and they're using it as a real key contrast issue with former President Trump, Biden's presumptive nominee, of course, in November. Vice President Harris referred to him as the architect of a health crisis, and she used that word crisis a lot to kind of address some of the other states, thinking Texas and other Republican-led states that have restricted abortion since the Dobbs decision. But it's a key issue for the Democratic Party that they think will appeal to young voters. And the subtext being, a week or so ago in Minnesota, you had a similar uncommitted movement that won 11 delegates, signaling that progressives and younger voters do feel anger towards how President Biden has handled Gaza. But from talking to the state party chair there, he says that issues like abortion and democracy will still galvanize these voters to come out this November.
Yeah, candidates do not go anywhere by accident. Aaron Navarro, who's earning those frequent flyer miles all over the country for us, thank you so much for your reporting. Let's go now to Katrina Kaufman, who is in Fort Pierce, Florida. Katrina, good to see you. So former President Trump was back in court today for this case regarding how he handled classified materials. What happened today?
We heard arguments about 2 motions to dismiss on the Presidential Records Act and then another on the Espionage Act. Donald Trump says that the statute is unconstitutionally vague as applied to him. The judge had told us that she would be thinking over these motions and replying promptly, and she really did. She has already dismissed the motion to dismiss based on constitutional vagueness. Now, that doesn't mean that that's totally gone, but she sees this as a question for the jury. And this is really in line with what we were hearing in the courtroom today. She was asking both sides whether it was premature to be talking about this issue and whether this should really be presented as questions to the jury. She was going through different ways they could try to define terms in those jury questions as well. So it seems like this is something she really wants to weigh during the trial.
That is a quick decision indeed. I also want to ask you about the hush money case, completely separate case that's in New York, because today the Manhattan District Attorney said he's willing to delay that trial for up to 30 days. I mean, that seems really significant. Why did he say that?
That was very surprising news this afternoon. The reason that he's willing to delay the trial is that Trump's team has just received tens of thousands of pages of discovery. And he says that it's only fair to give them some time to look through those documents before the trial begins. Trump had actually wanted a 90-day delay or to even dismiss the case. Bragg says that he is not opposed to a up to 30-day adjournment. But just to remind people, that would actually push this trial to when the Supreme Court arguments are for Trump's immunity appeal before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about, Katrina.
Yeah, and the judge will still have to make a determination on this. As of now, the trial still stands starting on March 25th.
Okay, we will definitely keep an eye on that and all of these cases that you are following for us. Katrina Kaufman, thank you.
Thank you.
And Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is calling for the end of a Netanyahu-led government in Israel. In a scathing speech, the highest-ranking Jewish elected official in the U.S. said Prime Minister Netanyahu has, quote, lost his way. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell responded. Here's some of what they both had to say on the Senate floor.
As a lifelong supporter of Israel, it has become clear to me the Netanyahu coalition no longer fits the needs of Israel after October 7th.
Make no mistake, the Democratic Party doesn't have an anti-Bibi problem. It has an anti-Israel problem. Israel is not a colony of America.
Several Senate Democrats have been calling on the president to halt supplying weapons to Israel until they do away with restrictions on U.S.-backed humanitarian aid entering Gaza. And No Labels is inching closer to launching a third-party presidential ticket. The group's national convention chair, he joins us next to explain why. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. The centrist group No Labels is moving ahead with plans to field a presidential ticket. The move could have a major impact on the 2024 presidential race. No Labels National Convention Chair Mike Rawlings joins us now. He's also the former mayor of Dallas. Mike, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here. So we have this matchup now between President Biden and former President Donald Trump. And in recent weeks, No Labels has been moving forward with plans to put forward an alternative unity ticket this election year. But how exactly will that process work?
Well, we're at a key point in the whole process. For the last 5 months, we've been interviewing delegates, over 800 delegates, asking them what they want in a presidential candidate, what they want in leadership in America. Last week, they said, please move ahead with this. Let's get serious talking to folks. So we've created an organization called the Country Over Party Committee, a group of citizen leaders that are interviewing candidates, who are vetting their backgrounds, strategizing about can they fit the bill for what we want. At that point, a nomination will come out of that committee, and then we will take it to the floor of our convention, our virtual convention of over 800 people, and we will take a vote by citizens in all 50 states to decide, is this the candidate and is this the ticket that we want to endorse? It's going to take a little time, but this is very important for America, and I'm very pleased about our process is well thought out.
And what exactly is the timeline? When would we expect an announcement of a candidate?
I don't think you should expect it next week. I don't think it may be in April. It may be, look, we got to get this done before the spring to get the campaign going. But time's not the critical issue here. It's making sure we have the right ticket to see a pathway for success to the White House.
And looking at what that ticket would be like, you've had several candidates who have essentially said no, at least publicly. Is your group considering a Republican? I know that former Georgia Republican Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan has been named as someone who may be interested. Can you confirm that he's in the running?
No, I'm not going to confirm any names. I will tell you this, that I think it's the attitude of the delegates and the Country Over Party Committee that probably a Republican should be at the top, a Democrat second, because we want to make sure that we take votes away from Donald Trump in this process. So that's the framework that we've been going into at this point.
I mean, it's interesting because over the past 24 hours, you've had an outside group announced to kind of run against third-party candidates. You also have the Biden or the DNC announcing a similar type of team within the DNC to run opposition on third-party candidates. What does that tell you? Is that concerning to you?
Well, first of all, it tells me that they're concerned about their ticket. And they are trying to put a focus on us, which, thank you. We like the focus because what we're doing here is very important. We're talking to the common sense majority of America. And one of the things is a lot of people don't know what we're doing. So the more focus, probably the better in that regards. Look, we didn't create the dilemma that's out there right now, where 70% of America wants neither candidate. And we've got approval ratings at an all-time low. And we've just got to make sure that we get America going in the right direction here. And we're going to do what is right in this democracy of the United States, and that is speak up, try to tell the story the best way we can. And if people like it, that's great.
And what exactly is your goal here? Is your goal to win the presidency or just send a message? Because so far you're only on the ballot in 13 states. How would you, what is the plan to get on the ballot everywhere?
Well, first of all, we're in it to win it, as we've said. We're not just trying to send a message. We are trying to make sure this movement stays alive in the future. We're very pleased that we're on those ballots. We're in process in 15 other states, and we see our way in the middle of May to get to 35. At some point, the candidates' campaign has to take over because of state laws, and so we've made progress. And I think it's important to know that Ross Perot, back in the day, was only getting signatures at this time. So we're well ahead of that process.
All right. Well, we will stay tuned, and we thank you so much for joining us, Mike Rawlings. Thank you. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And coming up next, we'll bring in our political panel to assess new CBS polling out of that big battleground state of Georgia. You're streaming America Decides. And welcome back to America Decides. Voters in Georgia are weighing in on which 2024 candidate they think benefits them most financially. A recent CBS News poll found 48% say they're better off under Trump's policies, while 22% say they're better off under President Biden's. The economy front and center in this campaign. Let's bring in our political panel, Ashley Etienne and Olivia Perez-Cubas. Ashley is a CBS News political contributor and former communications director for Vice President Kamala Harris, and Olivia served as the spokesperson for Nikki Haley's presidential campaign. Ladies, great to have you both with us here today. Lots to get to.
Yes.
Ashley, do you want to talk about this poll? Because you saw those numbers. The top line is that Biden is lagging behind Trump in that key battleground state of Georgia, and you can kind of see the economy seems to be fueling that. I'm curious what you make of that, considering Georgia was so critical to him winning in 2020.
Well, I mean, there's two reactions I have to it. One is it's too early to overinvest in polls, right? There was never a poll that showed that Donald Trump was going to win in 2016. My other reaction, though, I'm just going to have to say the quiet thing out loud since I'm a communicator.
Yeah.
It is hard to win a messaging battle against someone who lies. And that's just flat out it. And is not held to account, not just by the media, no disrespect, but also by his own party. So Joe Biden has an uphill battle every day to sort of push back against the lies that are being perpetuated by Donald Trump and all his lackeys around him. And then he's got to add on to that, couple it with the fact that he's got to figure out how to actually penetrate these communities and you know, sort of get his message of accomplishments to them in their feeds, where they are on their news media, right? In their, and so that is a challenge, and it's just hard to win a messaging battle against someone, and I've tried it, against someone who's willing to lie, and that's really what I see working out in these polls.
I mean, one thing, too, though, on the Republican side, Olivia, is that there are some glaring warning signs for Donald Trump in Georgia. We just had a primary there. Your former boss, Nikki Haley, was out of the race, but she was still on the ticket in Georgia, and obviously she didn't win the primary, but she did really well in the suburbs, and I've talked to a lot of Republicans who have said that should be, you know, glaring red lights for winning in November.
I think you said it best. It should be very much a warning sign for Donald Trump. And look, I want to talk a little bit about this kind of Haley voter who we see emerging. This is a voter who Nikki was consistently getting 30 to 40% of Republican primary voters. And these are people who are traditional conservative Republicans. These are independents, many who feel politically homeless. These are soft Democrats, many of whom are kind of view unfavorably Joe Biden and some of his policies. So she has captured what we are seeing as the Haley voter. And I will say that we kind of saw how important this block is going to be in Georgia because this voting block will determine who wins in November. To your point, in Georgia, Nikki did, I think, over 60,000 voters came out in Georgia to vote for her, a third of whom came out on Tuesday to vote for her, a week after she dropped out of the campaign. And this is kind of what Nikki has been talking about in terms of this is a significant block. We have to appeal to them. They can't be ignored. And I will say that whichever candidate works hardest to earn their vote will be the candidate that wins in November.
And have you seen Trump makes any sort of overtures to those types of voters?
You know, I think that remains to be seen. I think a better way to maybe look at it is what won't earn their support. And what won't earn their support is saying anyone who's not MAGA isn't part of the Republican Party. What won't earn their support is saying anyone who supports or donates to his political opponents is not welcomed or will be permanently barred. I think what won't earn their support is criticizing Nikki Haley's dress or going after the service of her husband. These are all things that he did in recent weeks. These are all things that certainly won't earn their support. And I think in terms of what it will take to earn their support, it's about bringing voters back into the fold. It's about making the Republican Party a story of addition again, and we've lost that a little bit.
I mean, as we've seen, though, Biden's the one that's made some overtures to those voters, saying they have a place in my campaign. And Ashley, it also seems like the Biden campaign is really leaning into the idea of expanding abortion access. We saw Kamala Harris, of course, go to Minnesota today. It was a pretty historic visit.
Yeah, no, I mean, history was made today. She's the first either president or vice president to go visit an abortion clinic. I mean, abortion is a gift that will continue to give to the Democratic Party. It's the gift that will continue to give for the party. But I would love to go back to this question about Nikki Haley voters. I just would challenge her to demonstrate the courage that she was asking her voters to demonstrate. Like, why drop out of the race? You're still garnering 75,000 people in Georgia without even being actively, aggressively campaigning. Why not explore all of your options? You could run third party. She could run third party and hold on to her voters and try to extract something out of the Republican Party. Here's the other reality, though. Donald Trump is right. There is no place for those voters in the current Republican Party. So my question is, what are the Nikki Haleys of the world going to do to really reestablish the Republican Party? Because it's no longer what it was. It's now Donald Trump's party. It's now the MAGA party. And you've got all of these Republicans that are looking for a home. And so my question is to Nikki Haley and her team. Don't get out of the race. Stay in. Demonstrate a level of courage on behalf of the American people, on behalf of American democracy.
I mean, she's obviously dropped out of the race, but can you imagine her staying engaged? I mean, she said that Donald Trump will have to earn the support of these voters.
Well, look, and to be clear, the campaign is over. I no longer speak for her, so these are my thoughts. Yeah. But look, I think that there is a place for Nikki in this party, in the political landscape. She has an important voice. For my sake, for the party's sake, I hope she stays active in the space. But I would say it's not just Republicans who feel like they don't have a home. There are many independents who feel like they don't have a home, and there are many soft Dems who feel like they don't have a home. And that might be
your new coalition for the new Republican Party. I mean, the reality is, like, we can't put the genie back in the bottle anymore. The Republican Party is going to have to start taking very seriously. Do we want to continue to go down this path of MAGA, or do we want to right size and get back to the Reagan, policy heavy, Republican Party that we used to know?
It's important to remember, though, that the Republican Party is bigger than one person, and it might not feel that way, and it's certainly undergoing a transformation. You could say the same of the Democrat Party. But there is, I think, more than anything, what, for example, Nikki Haley and her campaign demonstrated is that there is a significant voting bloc of traditional conservative Republicans who do believe in fiscal discipline, who do want to see national security, who don't like this notion of increasing isolationism. There is a space for them. They are a bloc that cannot be ignored. And if they are ignored, Republicans will lose up and down the ticket.
Yeah, they will continue to lose. I think let me just respond, if you don't mind, to Olivia's point. Joe Biden in the last election, 2020, built a coalition most voters ever secured by any presidential candidate. Build a coalition that was broader than the Democratic Party now. And he's on his path to doing that. To your point, abortion is one of those issues that's going to fuel and sort of enable that broad coalition that we're seeing. So I see we're headed down a trajectory of continuing to broaden and growing our party, whereas on the other side, clearly what Nikki Haley demonstrated in Georgia is the Republican Party is shrinking.
Well,
as it is, as it stands.
That remains to be seen, and I hope that so long as voices like the Nikki Haleys of the world stay in the fight, or that their voices remain out there, that is not the case.
Okay, well, we will continue this discussion throughout the course of this campaign. It's so good to have you.
Thank you.
Representation of, you can have these discussions in a nice civil setting.
Absolutely.
So Ashley and Olivia, thank you very much. That does it for us today, but we'll be back with another edition of America Decides on Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You're streaming CBS News.